Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 12th of August, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So some big news over the last 24 hours. As I mentioned yesterday, there was a consensus layer call, and we're going to probably get TTD, Mainnet TTD announced on that call, and we did. So the Ethereum Mainnet merge has been scheduled for around September 15th/16th, a bit earlier than, I guess, the week of September 19th that was originally quoted, which is very, very cool to see, obviously. So in about, I guess, like less than 5 weeks now, Ethereum will be a full proof of stake network. I don't know what else to say. I've been talking about this for so long now, I'm kind of like lost for words, but it's finally kind of happening. We finally have a hard date here. I guess like TTD, the TTD number has been decided, and this still is considered quote unquote a soft date. Like it's going to be, I guess, like set in stone on the all core devs call next week, but I guess that's more of a formality. This is pretty much confirmed, and you know, depending on, I guess, like what TTD does and what kind of like the hash power does around that TTD number, it could happen earlier, it could happen later, but the target is September 15th to 16th. Now, if you want to keep track of all of that and keep track of the countdown, you can at Bordel.wtf here, which is the website that you've been able to keep track of basically all the test nets kind of being merged. So you can see here the TTD number, and to achieve it, basically this is how much terahash on the network was needed. Right now, it's expected to happen based on the current kind of like difficulty, September 15th, 4:44 a.m. UTC. So I guess that's like only a few hours difference between the girly merge in terms of timing. But as I said, this can and probably will change as we get closer to it, because miners will go offline, and there's also kind of like something happening with some of the miners. The 5 gig limit on the DAG is being hit, so we might see some miners fall off because of that as well. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see as we get closer what the hash rate looks like and what the difficulty looks like as a consequence of that. But yeah, we finally have a hard date there for the mainnet merge, which it's kind of funny because it was announced and like, it kind of reminded me of, I guess, the Beacon Chain launch in 2020, because the Beacon Chain technically launched in, I guess, like, I mean, it wasn't really a bear market, but like the date around it, I think, was announced when ETH was still like, I don't know, $300, $400 or something like that. So ETH was definitely not anywhere near its all-time high at that point. And it launched December 1st, 2020. ETH was about $600 back then. And it's kind of, I'm feeling a similar thing now, where we're obviously still in a bear market. Yes, we've come up a bit from the lows, but you know, this is happening in 5 weeks. So who knows where the ETH price is going to go to from here? Are we going to have like a hype pump because of the merge narratives? I don't know. Like, I'm not trading this, obviously. I've just been stacking ETH as I normally do. But it's kind of interesting to see that both of these kind of like major upgrades have been launched in kind of like bear markets, and then you can kind of look at the other view of things, where EIP 1559 was launched in, I guess, like, people are calling it the dead cat bounce in 2021. Obviously 1559 came out in August, and we had already topped in like May of 2021. So yeah, I mean, the funny thing is like, because the upgrades are not targeted for specific market conditions, they just kind of like happen whenever they happen. We get these kind of like things that we can look back on. So yeah, I'm super excited that's actually happening in a bear market. In a bull market, it would have been way too noisy. It still is quite noisy. I'm still seeing a lot of people repeating those misconceptions that I've spoken about kind of like the staked ETH becoming unlocked, and the I guess like the merge lowering gas fees and stuff like that. I'm actually seeing the staked ETH being unlocked misconception being more common these days than the gas fees thing, and I think that is because people are trying to trade this event, right? People are trying to kind of like maximize, I guess, like the alpha here that they're going to get out of this, and people are going to try and sell the news, so to speak. So they're going to try and sell before other people do. So maybe there's a bit of psyops going on there with traders and stuff like that. I don't know. Like, I don't really pay attention to that. I think there are a lot of people that still do truly believe that all of the staked ETH is becoming unlocked at the merge, when obviously that's false. You guys know it's false, but maybe people, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy where people sell off ETH because they're like, oh, we're about to be dumped on, you know, that $10+ billion. Sorry, it's more than $10 billion. It's a lot more than that. Of ETH is getting unlocked, and it's all going to be market dumped. Like, when you just think about the logic that people kind of like put into that, it's kind of weird, right? So yeah. Anyway, it's not. You guys know it's not. You guys know withdrawals aren't enabled for 6 to 12 months after the merge. So yeah, there's that, and there's also the Bellatrix fork time got got kind of put forward here. So Mainnet Bellatrix, which is the hard fork for the execution layer, the layer that we all use today to get it ready for the merge, will be going live at a kind of like Epoch 144896. Sorry, Bellatrix is for the consensus layer, not the execution layer, at the 6th of September at around 11:34 a.m. UTC. So that's just about 10 days before mainnet merge. So that got confirmed as well. All right, so a couple of other tweets around the merge before I move on. There was this one from Ansgar here, who basically said, fun comparison, on the call today, being the consensus call, we moved the merge date ahead by 4 days, from the 19th to the 15th of September. And that's kind of funny for me to see as well, because it's usually the other way around, right? But the fact that we've moved it forward a little bit is really cool. Ahead a little bit is really cool. And then he says, those 4 extra days of proof of work would have resulted in $100 million of additional ETH issuance. The Protocol Guild, a core dev funding org, has raised a total of $10 million in its entire existence. And then he continues by saying, listen, deciding not to have in-protocol core development funding is a really hard choice to make. That's how much we value Ethereum's credible neutrality. And like, this is something that I've spoken about a lot before, but like, consider this. If there was like a block reward of just 5% going to core devs, then their core devs would have made $5 million in 4 days, right? And that's like, that's just, and that's at these prices, right? Like, that depends on kind of like what the price of ETH is, but that's just a crazy amount. But the thing is that because Ethereum values credible neutrality so highly, and it doesn't want to favor any one group in the ecosystem or in the kind of like network, we don't have that. There is an example of a high profile network having block reward funding like Zcash, but I think, I don't know if I'd say that Zcash can't be considered credibly neutral because of that, but you can go look at the Zcash price. It doesn't really perform very well, and there's not a one-to-one mapping here, but I think it just adds to that kind of like thing of, okay, well, you know, we know where the ETH that gets mined is kind of like going. We have like a relatively confident view on what's going to be happening to that ETH. Most of it's going to be sold off for miners, and then in proof of stake, we have the same kind of like relative confidence of what's going to happen to it. We can say, okay, well, a lot of ETH, not a lot of ETH, but like the ETH that's getting sold is probably just going to be sold for tax purposes, and then the other kind of like ETH rewards aren't really going to be sold for anything but profit taking, because there's not really those high costs in proof of stake as there are in proof of work. So it's just easier to reason about. Whereas if you have like I guess a block reward kind of like funding mechanism here, it'd be kind of harder to reason about, because you could basically go 2 ways with it. You could say, okay, well, they're just going to keep dumping the ETH as soon as they get it to fund development. Or you could say, well, it's in their best interest to hold ETH because their development obviously adds kind of like value to the network, which should logically increase the ETH price over time. So if they actually hold the ETH that they're getting, it would be worth a lot more in the future. So it's kind of hard to reason about what's going to happen there in terms of kind of like market pressure. But at the same time, there's also the credible neutrality thing, where it's like, okay, well, if there is a block reward kind of like funding in there, like how is that getting split up between core developers, and does it lead to a slippery slope of the core developers basically saying, well, you know, let's bump it up to 10% or 15% or 20%, right? So there's all those kind of like things that fall into it. And it also kind of like maybe even from a legal point of view makes it look like whoever the core developers are that kind of like entity that people are relying on to generate value for the network. And there could be obviously an argument made that ETH is a security in that kind of like respect. But yeah, anyway, I just thought this was a great little comparison here, showing that there's a shit ton of money being made by miners, and if we had a block reward going to core developers, we would solve all their funding forever, but it would come with a host of other issues. So yeah, I thought that was a great little comparison here. All right, so finally on the merge stuff, the Stateful merge NFTs, the first set was revealed today. So yeah, as you can see in the tweet, Girly merge success means it's time to announce the first artist in New Home of the Heart. So these are the five artists that are participating in the merge NFT series run by the Stateful Works account here, and obviously all the proceeds are going to the Protocol Guild slash the ETH Core devs. And there's a bit more info in here about this, but you can go kind of like check out these artists for yourself. So just wanted to highlight that for you guys. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. All right, now on to some depressing news. It has come out today that Dutch police have arrested a suspected Tornado Cash developer. Now, this developer has been named by, I believe, Banteg on Twitter. He's the only one who's named them, but I don't think it really matters who the developer is. I think what matters is the fact that the Dutch police have arrested this developer for, I guess, like facilitating money laundering and for profiting from it. That's basically some of the charges against them. And the reason why I say this is depressing and really bad is because we're now arresting people for writing open source code, right? I know that you could make a comparison here and say, well, people who kind of, I guess, create malware get arrested all the time. It's like, okay, yeah, but it's different in that malware, I mean, there's an intent there, right? When you create malware, your intent is to do something bad, like to hack a system or to phish someone, right? There is intent to do something bad there. But deploying something like Tornado Cash to the Ethereum network and allowing people to kind of like mix their funds to achieve more privacy, the intent there is to build a privacy tool, right? To build a decentralized, open source, neutral privacy tool. The intent isn't to facilitate money laundering, right? The intent isn't to facilitate illegal activities. And even if it was, it'd be very, 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 very hard to prove that. Like unless you can kind of like find evidence that these developers have, of these developers kind of like encouraging that activity or kind of like wanting that activity to exist on the system, then it's kind of like very hard to prove that. So, I guess like in legal cases, it's all about intent at the end of the day. In kind of like criminal cases, like if you're trying to prosecute someone and you're charging them with something, well, you have to prove that they did that. You have to prove that your charges are based in reality beyond reasonable doubt if it does go to court. And we all know that a lot of things don't go to court. A lot of things are done with kind of like plea deals and stuff like that without the parties accepting guilt, which is a whole nother discussion. But I think if this is the slippery slope that we're going down, where you can be arrested for developing tools like Tornado Cash, right, that don't have the intent of doing something harmful, because as I said, you can make the comparison with something like malware, but there is definitely an intent behind malware, right? If you're kind of like developing it and distributing it, then there is an intent there. But I guess even making an argument there and this was actually a hot topic and probably still is within the cybersecurity community, if you're developing malware for fun, right, to learn how it works, to kind of like teach yourself how to kind of like debug it and decode it and stuff like that, like you're not criminally liable. And as far as I know, there hasn't really been, I think there maybe has been like some instances here and there of people being arrested over that, but arresting people for just developing code, just the code itself is insane, because as I said, it's all about intent. Like just developing something doesn't really mean that you're intending to use it for criminal activities or intending to use it for bad things or anything like that. And I know that's obvious to all of us, but I feel like this goes beyond Tornado Cash. I feel like the US government, and I don't know about other governments around the world, they kind of like seem to be doing this strategy of a chilling effect. What I mean by that is, I think that what they're hoping is that they can scare enough people into not using these tools that they don't have to outright kind of like ban this sort of stuff. They can just keep clamping down over time, and they can scare people off building and using these tools. And to be honest, like that is a tried and true approach. Like, I think Tornado Cash, people kind of like ran for the exits. They tried to withdraw their funds out of there because they didn't want to be associated with it anymore. I'm sure Tornado Cash's usage has basically plummeted because no one wants their addresses being blacklisted from other apps and stuff like that. So it is having the desired effect. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, or I think the day before on the Refuel, what does it look like when the US government goes even further than this and they start sanctioning kind of like things, not just Tornado Cash, but like just other apps within Ethereum, and start sanctioning entire networks? Like, I'm thinking about it now, like how is Zcash and Monero going to be, I guess, like protected from this? Like if they're going to sanction Tornado Cash for being a privacy preserving tool, why wouldn't they do the same to Zcash and Monero? And the thing is that centralized exchanges, if they haven't already, are probably going to delist those assets because of the fact that they're tied to kind of like that activity there, and they don't want to risk it, sort of thing. So that chilling effect is definitely playing out. It's really shitty, and it's going to take years to sort this stuff out, guys. Like, even if someone challenges this in court based on constitutional grounds in the US, it's not a short process. It takes years. And the thing is that like the Treasury Department and the US government know that. They know that during that time, this is going to have that intended chilling effect, and they're probably hoping that by doing this, they slow the adoption of crypto down enough that it doesn't kind of become a concern for them. And then they'll probably try and sneak in something like a CBDC, right? So these are pretty big concerns, and I would say that out of everything that I've experienced in crypto, the sanctions of Tornado Cash is probably one of the kind of like scariest things for me, because of the fact that this is the US government definitively saying, hey, we're not above sanctioning open source code, which is what this entire industry runs on. And it's really exposed a lot of apps as Dino, decentralized in name only as well, which is really sad. We knew that they had admin keys, we knew that the front ends were centralized, but it's really kind of like just bringing all that to the surface now for everyone to see. So that's, I guess, like there's a silver lining there where more of these apps might be kind of like might try to decentralize faster, which is really cool as well. Obviously, we need to do that. Obviously, I mentioned it plenty of times, but nation states are the final boss. If you can't resist nation states, well, then you're not actually decentralized. That's the only true test of decentralization, I believe, is resisting nation states. And the funny thing is, Tornado Cash, the code is still running on Ethereum, right? You're still able to use it. The miners are not censoring Tornado Cash transactions, and I doubt they will, and I doubt validators will. Maybe there are kind of like some miners and some validators that will eventually kind of like drop those transactions. But the thing is that the network is censorship resistant. So if someone kind of like doesn't accept that transaction, another validator or miner will pick it up and kind of like validate it. So the censorship concerns on that front aren't too big, but the concerns around kind of like centralized exchanges and services and stuff like that, banning your address is very concerning, obviously. And actually on that note as well, you can see here that dydx has actually begun blocking people from using their service for compliance reasons, which basically means that if you have interacted with Tornado Cash, I'm pretty sure your kind of like address is getting banned. And there is going to be false positives here where maybe you didn't interact with Tornado Cash at all and you get caught in the crossfire for whatever reason. I think this is like a pretty big overreaction, to be honest, but dydx seems to have always been very, very, very cautious of regulations. Obviously, their airdrop, US citizens weren't able to get the airdrop that they did and all that sorts of stuff. And, you know, L2Beat actually quote tweeted this and said that this is why we built dydx.l2beat.com, which allows you to trustlessly exit, completely circumventing the official UI. So basically being able to exit from the dydx ZK rollup here, which is obviously a benefit of rollups, but more so a benefit of rollups that don't have like a centralized key and can't kind of like stop you from withdrawing because of the admin keys and stuff like that. But yeah, so all in all, this is just really sad, really dark days for crypto, I think. But also, as I said, silver lining here, it's probably going to push apps to decentralize faster, not just their smart contracts, but the full stack there. It's going to probably lead to court cases, which are going to set precedent. It's going to lead to kind of like challenges of this stuff, probably more money thrown at kind of politicians via lobbying, because the industry is not small, guys. Like, it's $1 trillion industry. There are a lot of vested interests who don't want to see kind of like crypto go away. And there's plenty of people working in crypto at this point. So, I don't know. The US government seems to be taking a very, a kind of like, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? A very ill thought out approach in terms of, by doing this, they're hurting themselves long term. Maybe it's beneficial short term to kind of like achieve their desired effect. But at the same time, if they actually sat down and studied this technology, it's not all about everything being decentralized and everyone being able to use the network with no kind of like consequences and criminals being able to money launder and all that sorts of stuff. It's not about that at all. It's about building better systems and tools that are less prone to capture, that are more transparent, that are kind of like more open to being used by everyone, that give individuals freedom. And when you look at the US and you look at their constitution and you look at what their values are or traditionally have been, it fits in with all of that. So I don't know what the kind of strategy is there on the US government's behalf. Maybe they just don't understand this technology enough, which I pretty much would put my money on, that they don't understand this technology enough. And they probably looked at Tornado Cash the way they look at something like the Pirate Bay and say, okay, well, Tornado Cash, all these addresses, we can just kind of like sanction them and we can kind of like arrest the developers and then it goes away, sort of thing, just like with the Pirate Bay. But the funny thing is about the Pirate Bay and torrent sites in general is that they've never gone away. Like, you can arrest the people, you can kind of, I guess, go after them, you can sue them, you can throw them in jail, whatever you want to do to them, but you can't kill the idea. And the idea of torrents, it hasn't been killed at all. I think obviously we had better services come along that offered the same kind of like product or a similar product that you kind of like paid a monthly subscription for, such as Spotify and Apple Music, and you got a kind of like a more streamlined and, I guess, legal experience. But at the end of the day, like, the torrent sites still exist. The Pirate Bay still exists. It's kind of like you cut one head of the Hydra off to sprout in its place. And I think we're going to get to that point with these DeFi apps. The front ends may get censored and shut down, but then, you know, all these other front ends are going to pop up to kind of like combat that. Because at the end of the day, if your smart contracts are truly decentralized on Ethereum, then you can't just stop them by shutting down the front end. Yes, you can basically have a bit of a chilling effect there and make it harder for people to access it, but people will still be able to access it at the end of the day. So yeah. Anyway, going to move on from that for now. We'll cover it again if there's more details coming out about that. As I said, this kind of the news just came out, so we're still kind of like unpacking it here, but I'm sure there'll be a bunch of takes over the weekend about this. All right, so interesting post from Lodestar today about light clients. So this post is titled "The Road Ahead for Ethereum Light Clients." This is a new post, so it's not just a repost from the team here. You may have been hearing about light clients recently, especially in the face of the Tornado Cash stuff. It kind of like makes it so you don't have to run your own full node in order to kind of like have your own RPC to interact with the Ethereum network. And these light clients have been kind of like a long time coming for Ethereum and still being worked on. Hopefully we can get to them in the next couple of years. It's definitely not a kind of like thing that is an easy thing to achieve. You can kind of like see the status quo here in this image of kind of like what it's like today. But yeah, I definitely recommend giving this blog post a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below if you want to learn more about light clients. All right, speaking of blog post, Li.fi has a blog post about the bridge stack today, which they're basically giving a snapshot of the bridging ecosystem in Q3 2022, including the bridging trilemmas, types of bridges and design trade-offs, NFT bridges, and open issues and challenges. This is a long read, about 18 minutes. This is an updated, I guess, blog post to the one that I shared a few months ago around bridges, so you should definitely go give this a read and check it all out if you want to know all about bridges. Basically, I mean, I've talked about them for a while on the Refuel and said how they haven't, you know, not all bridges are created equal and how you should learn the differences between them. Well, here's a blog post for you to read to learn the differences between them. So that's a kind of like nice weekend read to add to your reading stack there. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you. All right, so the next milestone in StarkNet's development here is live on Mainnet. So recursive proving of general computation is now live, or recursive Starks. The TLDR is that it scales StarkX apps as well as StarkNet with a single proof. It boosts scale and delivers benefit in cost and latency, a rare and exciting occurrence of scale and latency moving in tandem and not being a trade-off. It sets the stage for L3 and other benefits. So you can read their blog post on recursive proving as well, which was published quite a while ago, I believe. Okay, this okay, I get what they're doing here. So if you click on recursive proving, it just goes kind of like back to the same blog post because it's recursive. Derp. Anyway, I do believe they had like another blog post a while ago on this sort of stuff, but that was quite funny. Anyway, read this kind of post for more details here on how it works and like what this means for kind of like end users, what this means for the StarkNet and StarkX kind of technologies here. But very cool to see this live on Mainnet. I believe it's been a long time coming. They've definitely been wanting to do this for a long time. That's why I mentioned that blog post. But I like that they did that little joke in there. That was good. That caught me off guard there. But maybe I've spoiled it for you guys now. But you guys got to see me live go through that. But anyway, I'm not going to keep going on about that. Moving on to an update out of Orbiter Finance today. So they are tracking Arbitrum Nova on their website, all the metrics around it. So you can go to their website here. I don't believe they're linking it here. So if I go to orbiter.finance, I'm pretty sure it will pop up if I click on L2 data up here. Yep. So you can click on L2 data and kind of scroll down, I believe, to Arbitrum Nova. If I am kind of like, this is Arbitrum here. There is Arbitrum Nova. Okay. So you can see kind of like stats around it, such as kind of roll-ups by daily transactions and things like that as well. I'm looking for kind of like the detailed view here. I might be blind, but I'm not seeing it right now, which is okay. Maybe if I go more, okay. Yeah, okay, there's more. Okay, if I click more, there's more kind of like detail here. So you can see this is Arbitrum Nova right here. They've got other roll-ups listed here, but this is Arbitrum Nova. So total transactions, total accounts, TVL, transactions for the day, active accounts, and new accounts. So we can look at, I guess, like the last week to see the growth here. And then we can see, obviously, other networks such as Arbitrum, Arbitrum 1, I should say, Optimism, ZK Sync, and the rest of those here. And there's also the dApps data as well for layer 2 dApps and new contracts. I hadn't seen this before, actually. I'd obviously been relying on, there's dark mode. I've been relying on Dune Analytics, which has got a lot of great data, of course, and L2 Beat. But Orbiter Finance isn't just a bridge, kind of like a website anymore. They're also providing a bunch of L2 data, which I haven't seen elsewhere, kind of like displayed like this. So very, very cool to see this. You can go check it out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description. All right, so I've got a few minutes left here. I did want to talk about something else today. In relation, I guess, to the kind of like the merge, right? Like obviously the mainnet merge date was announced, and we have kind of like all these narratives that are going around right now. These, I guess, like bad narratives that are going around right now when it comes to the merge. But it's not just those misconceptions that I've spoken about. It's also with, I guess, like certain communities out there shifting goalposts. And I wanted to discuss this because I think it's quite funny, and I think it's a good way of kind of like looking at things. So my kind of way of looking at things is if the critics are always moving the goalpost, then they're not good critics. And an example of this is, for the longest time, Bitcoin maximalists have said that proof of stake was never going to get shipped on Ethereum. Well, we are basically there of ship. I mean, we did ship proof of stake technically, right? But they moved the goalpost back then to, it's not actually a proof of stake Ethereum network because there's two networks now, blah, blah, blah. So they moved to that, Ethereum's never going to do the merge. Now it looks like the merge to them now, they're finally noticing that the merge is actually going to happen. They're starting to move the goalpost again, and now they're moving it to some kind of like, I guess, like fake concern around Ethereum. They're like, Ethereum's going to become insecure now because of this. Like, okay, if you hate Ethereum, if you think it's a scam, why do you care? And then they'll say, it's because of the end users. We don't want them getting hurt. It's like, okay, but like the end users, you saying that is kind of like weird because you harp on a lot more about Ethereum than the actual scams in this ecosystem. So that example of the shifting goalposts, I think, is a clear way to tell who is a good critic and who is not a good critic. Because good critics will stick to the criticisms and then admit they were wrong. They won't just move the goalposts and not admit they were wrong about certain criticisms and just move on to the next thing. And I'm seeing a lot of them recently as well. Kind of discover things like the exit queue or the deposit queue for getting into staking, saying that it's kind of like just a Ponzi for number go up and stuff like that. And it's like, guys, like this has been known about for 4 years since this spec came out. Like this is not new. Have you not looked into Ethereum proof of stake before? And that to me is just evidence that they haven't. So again, that's another kind of like red flag that goes up and kind of like says, okay, well these people are just like absolutely bad critics. They've got no idea what they're talking about. They're not even worth listening to. I'm all for not getting stuck in echo chambers, but there's no point listening to bad critics who just always move the goalposts because they're just going to keep feeding you bad information. They're going to keep feeding you their own bias, and you're not going to really get anywhere. There's plenty of good critics that you can listen to when it comes to, I guess, like Ethereum. They are mostly within the Ethereum community. It's very hard to find outside critics for Ethereum that are actually honest and kind of bring up good criticisms. But it's just hilarious to me. And I haven't just seen it from the Bitcoin community. I've seen it from so many. They're finally cluing in to exactly what a kind of like Ethereum proof of stake is, and they're trying to poke holes in it now. And it's like, guys, like this has been known for so long. Why are you now just trying to poke holes in it? Is it because you finally come to the realization that, wow, they're actually going to ship a full proof of stake network? It probably is that, and they have to move on and find the next thing. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that because of the fact that it's very, very important, I think, if you are trying to make sure you don't get stuck in an echo chamber, but also make sure that you're getting good data, good information, good criticisms coming to you so that you can kind of like sift through them and see what's valid and see what's not, and you have your own views, of course, on all of that there. But yeah, I'm not going to go on more about that. I mean, I could rant about this stuff for ages, but I'm not going to because I know it gets a very ranty at times. So I think I'm going to leave it at that for today. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks everyone.